everyone. So let me, so good morning here. And it's like, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about your family culture. And that's something that we don't think about a lot. We think about it for our businesses a lot, right? We think about the culture of a business and whether or not that company succeeds a lot of times is based upon that culture. Well, it's the same concept within your family. So today, I hope you will join us because we're going to dig into 4 areas of family culture that you may not even realize is impacting your family and causing a lot of stress. So I'm excited for you to meet Katie Tieken, who's going to be on here to share with us today. My name is Cheryl Bassett, and I'm founder of Unstoppable Connections, international bestseller, and creator of the award-winning Unstoppable Family Meeting Toolkit. I am also the host of this show, Kitchen Table Conversations, as part of the Edge Network. So I do get to share these 4 gifts that really are a reflection of my own family's journey and have everything to do with how we connected as a family, where we felt heard, respected, celebrated, and supported in that process. So I get to share these 4 gifts. And if you would like to learn more about the work for connecting families, you can go to my website, which is unstoppableconnections.com. And if you have an idea for this show or you'd like to be on the show, you can actually reach out to me at kitchentableconversations.com. Now, I want to set an intention for the show, and I do this for every show because I want to ground it really in this space that's just coming from a true celebration of the person who came here today with us to share. So what this show does is it features the fun stuff to the tough stuff and everything in between. It's all designed, though, to ignite a conversation, to strengthen your family, and to create a positive ripple out into the world. So what we do is we tap into one of the gifts, which is the gift of love. It's the 4th gift. The gift of love we choose to unwrap by choosing to celebrate the person who came here today, their talents, their passion, their energy, and their vision of what that ripple can be about. So with that, I want to just share with you just a little bit about Katie before I bring her on and have you meet her. Katie helps intentional moms learn practical methods of nurturing their children's emotional skills. This gives children the tools that they need to be confident right now while preparing them for a future that's going to be filled with healthy relationships and a rewarding life. She uses her background in coaching, education, and of course, as a mom, to bridge the gap between knowing emotional skills are important, but then applying them in real life situations. So with that, let me bring Katie on to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you here. So really excited about this topic. And I sort of, it's interesting because obviously, I get to share the 4 gifts, but I feel like this is 4 things too that I mean, we're both on that 4th thing, but I think it's just like understanding the more that we can kind of dig into the depth of our families and really understand that, then obviously we evolve as a family together. And that's really what I think this is about. And I think that's what you're talking about. Like, how does a company grow? It's because they have a strong culture. How does the family grow because of that? But before we dig into that, because I'm really excited for you to get to share, tell us about your journey, how you got here, what inspired you to take the pathway that you're on?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how, it always feels when you're growing up like a little like, I don't know what direction I should be going in life. And then looking back, it's like it all lines up and you're like, oh, well, of course I ended up here. It all lined up perfectly. But I've always been super passionate about families and really family cultures, though I didn't know what to call them at the time. But even just growing up, I grew up in a homeschooling family of 10 children. So definitely hyper-focused, lots of real life experience just there, right, with families and family dynamics. But being able to see the patterns that not only my family had, especially between, the older teenagers and the small children, but also comparing that to like friends' families and seeing the differences. And even as a teenager, I sat there and go, why is their family this way? And our family's that way. And in their family, it's easy to do this. And my family, it's hard to do that. And just kind of noticing these things. And then as I became a coach and I spent several years doing trauma coaching and addiction recovery, and I just kept seeing this pattern over and over again of it always coming back, whatever challenging situations or things that people had created in their lives, always worked back to an experience they had growing up, you know, in their childhood, and experiences they had that taught them and changed the way that they saw the world and the way that they saw themselves. And so I just became super passionate about seeing the potential for fixing these things when they're children, before they can play out and develop and go, you know, huge adult life problems.
Right.
You know, how can we start solving these problems and addressing them as soon as they come up, and while they're being made, instead of, you know, after the fact. And so I just have been really passionate about let's fix this early. But.
Well, so first of all, I think that you and I, as you know, tried to do the show once before and it didn't quite work out. But so we're redoing this. But I don't think I heard the last time that you come from a family of 10.
Yeah.
Oh dear Lord. Okay, so that explains so much, right? You're right. With your pathway and why you're passionate about this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're right. It's obviously that. That family culture that gets developed so early. And it's funny because I've had so many people come on the show that talk a little bit about, and I think we also talked about this last time, like there's such a profound that they take and absorb, and they're like a sponge between the ages of like 0 and 7 or 0 and 8, right? And so many of these foundational beliefs get developed during that time frame.
Yeah. It's true. So it's that powerhouse time where you really need to be paying attention. And the almost frustrating part, especially as a mom who's there right now with my kids, and, you know, I've got three boys who are all in that age, you know, under that age, mm-hmm. is that you've got like super important, all these things are being developed, all these perceptions are being built, and these structures in their minds and their experience. But then you've also got diapers and potty training, and, you know, them learning not to hit, and all these like just things that get up in your face and push your buttons and like push your limits. Yeah. And so it's a time where, especially, you know, me with my, you know, awareness and stuff, knowing that these are big and important, is I want to be so intentional and like focused and doing this right. But you've also got, oh my gosh, you just smeared poop all over the wall. Like, it's just, you want all these other things going on. So it's a really interesting, like, almost dichotomy in a way that it's such an important key time for all these emotional learnings and such, but it's such a hard time in terms of just physically getting through a day, right? Yeah. And so it's it's a tough spot, right? Mm-hmm.
So it's funny because we were talking about this the other day and with someone else, but in some ways, this age that we're talking about, where kids really are taking it all in, it's almost like as parents, that's our superpower during that time frame, right? Yeah. Because we're completely getting to have sort of those core foundational beliefs built into our children at that time frame. So obviously paying attention, right? Which there was no awareness around this years ago, right? Yeah. You know, I'm grateful that I didn't mess it up too much, but at the same time, I think standing in that awareness, and it doesn't mean getting it always right, because you're not. Like if you put that on yourself, then you're just going to stress yourself out. And I even used to tell my boys, you can't grow through guilt, only through awareness. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I had to remind myself of that more than anyone, right? Yes. So, so your ages, you have 3 boys, and I'm trying to remember now. Do you have a daughter as well?
No, just 3 boys.
3 boys. Okay. Just 3 boys. Okay.
Yes, just 3 boys.
Okay. I just had 2, but I do have 2 stepdaughters, but they were older. So let's dig into, because I really want to make sure we honor and respect kind of what you came here today to share, which is really these 4 different areas about family culture that could be lurking, below the surface that people aren't aware of. So what's the first one that you talk about?
Well, the first one that I like to focus on, which is really kind of at the root of things, is what I call your mental culture, which would include the words that you use, the beliefs that you have, and the thought processes that kind of go on, or the assumptions that you make. Mm-hmm. And it really, a big piece of this is expectations. And so being able to be aware of your expectations and tracking those to gauge your reactions. So digging into that a little bit more,
Right.
is, for instance, if you spill something or knock something over or drop something, is it your family culture and just normal to, you know, go, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot, or, you know, or swear, or you just, or even if you don't swear, you don't say anything, you just like, and you get all tense and you have that reaction. You're like, and then you kind of like busy yourself in tense, and, you know, everyone in the room can tell, oh, okay, they're upset now. Right. And the learning to pay attention to the words and the phrases and the reactions in a way that shows your expectations. Because really what this comes down to, if you want to start shifting those reactions that you're having, you want to look at your expectations. What are you expecting to have happen? Because in a situation like that, if you are getting upset and, say, angry or frustrated because you knocked something over, I mean, it's one thing to be like, oh man, I spilt this and I needed it for dinner, and now we're, you know, kind of having to scramble. Like, that is, of course. But if it's just a simple thing and you're getting kind of overreactive to it, then the expectation, you need to check in with those expectations. And maybe your expectation is I shouldn't do things like that. I should be smarter than that. Yeah. And you expect yourself never to make any mistake, never to just bump something over, right? Yeah. And again, that ties into the belief that knocking something over impacts who you are.
Right.
Right. Oh, well, I am an idiot if I knock something over. You believe that, though, that's accurate.
Yeah.
And so
my stepdaughter, I think, has done, like, I watch her and I feel like she's just famously amazing at this, because like something will go and she'll go, uh-oh, you know, that sucks. You know, like, she doesn't get upset about it ever, whether it's them or whether it's her. She's like, oh, well, you know, that's just life. Life does happen. What do we do? Like, what, you know, how do we, you know, because it's all about that response then. So I totally understand what you're saying. If obviously you get stressed out, even if you think you're not, your kids sense it, so that you're not going to hide it. Absolutely. Right. So,
and that's the dynamic, is that when you have to realize that that is the culture you're building in your family, you know, that's going to become the natural default. And when I talk about culture, I like to define it as, it's what's normal. Culture is, well, of course we do that. You know, it's like, well, of course we eat with forks. That's what we do. But, you know, parts of the world don't eat with forks. That's just culture.
Yeah.
And so there's so many things that we do that we don't realize are actually just culture. It's not, doesn't have to be this way.
That's
it's
a
just
great
the
analogy.
way that we're building. Yeah.
It's great. Now, just things that we just assume are normal things, and it may be not so normal. Right. Yes. As far as how we're responding and reacting, and how we're setting our children up. So, so the first one is family culture. Around the family culture is this mental culture that we're talking about. So what is the second one?
So the second one, and the first and second really are intertwined and play off each other really strongly, but it's the emotional culture. And so you need to check in with what emotions are allowed to be felt in your family, what emotions are not allowed to be felt in your family, and displayed and expressed, right? Because oftentimes, you know, I think our culture is getting more aware around, you know, that it's unhealthy to shut down emotions and you need to be able to express them and things like that. But oftentimes what we don't realize is that we'll kind of have this, like, rather than saying no, you know, no emotions, or only, most of the time it's only some emotions. And so for some families, it's normal and okay to express a lot of anger, but never express sadness. Like, that's like, whoa, don't go there. Now stop. That's nothing to cry about. You know, don't, that's not a big deal. You calm down. But it's okay to, like, oh my gosh, I'm angry and I'm like storming around or pouting or whatever that looks like. And so checking in on what, both in yourself and when you respond to your kids, what are you shutting down? What are you kind of like afraid of? And where that really comes from is it's kind of a fear. It's really easy to get afraid of emotions and feeling them, because it's easy to see examples where emotions led to poor behavior, right? I'm afraid to feel my anger because I don't want to freak out and break things or yell and scream or get abusive like someone else I know or saw. And so learning to distinguish between feeling an emotion and processing it and specific behaviors. You can still process anger without ever breaking anything or screaming or whatever. And really that just involves getting present with it and feeling it. And really the emotional work is where I spend most of my time in my body of work, because becoming aware around emotions and being able to identify them and work with them is really key to so many other parts of this process. But one of the big things I would like to talk about, because a lot of people just aren't aware of it, are what I call role playing. And what often happens is that a family will have a specific like track and program or role that you play when you fall into a specific emotion. For instance, like anger is a really obvious one, but you can also do this with sadness or frustration or, usually negative emotions. But you fall into this track of like, okay, an angry person, if I'm angry, then I'm going to pout for at least 15 minutes. I'm going to be tense. I'm going to, speak really shortly with anyone who talks to me. I'm going to get snippy and I'm going to slam anything I hold, and you kind of fall into that mode. Like, this is how I behave because I'm angry and I am justified in this behavior because 15 minutes ago, I knocked something over.
Right.
Right. And so learning to kind of catch and pay attention to and recognize my kid is now going and stomping for 15 minutes, even though their block tower fell over. Like, it's such not a big deal, right? Like, that's so ridiculous. Why are they doing that? Well, most of the times because you're doing it, right? Yeah. And it's becoming that cultural pattern.
Yeah.
So learning to break out of those tracks and that role playing that we get into can really start to shift a lot of family dynamics.
Yeah, it's funny. I used to always say to my boys, and again, it's so funny because I always feel like whenever I was saying it to them, I was saying it to myself, right? But you're never wrong for how you feel. It's just how you feel. And how you get to express that sometimes has to be done in a healthy way. Obviously, you can't punch a hole in the wall, and of course, but it's okay to feel those emotions. I think there was a beautiful movie that they did called Inside Out. I assume you saw it. Yeah, where it talks about all the gamut of emotions, right? And what was it, joy? Just wanted everybody to be joyful all the time, but but then you keep pushing. And I think really the anger comes out more when you're not acknowledging those emotions, right? It's building up. So we know that happens in adults. So that's not even just a kid thing. That's absolutely an adult thing. So because we all want to feel heard, and so that's good. So that's a big one. So the first one we did was mental culture. Then we're talking about emotional culture. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's all weaved together.
It is.
Sure. Yeah. So what is the third culture?
The third culture that I talk about is what I call the social culture, which really is how we relate to each other, especially in terms of personalities. And really what this comes to is learning to understand, recognize, and honor differences within your family, and being able to work with that and find a family dynamic that can function for everyone. And a simple example of this is with like introvert and extrovert, right? And so when you have, say one introverted child in a family full of extroverts, that child can become very, not only stressed and cause a lot of, upsets within the family because they're trying to get their needs met. And the family's kind of just going along with what they see as normal And well, of course we're going to go out and do all these things and be everywhere and be really busy because that suits us. And then, that one child is like getting stressed and anxious, and then they're crying and they're having meltdowns, and the parents like, I have no idea what's going on with this child. Right. When really, they need their downtime. They need, they need their needs to be met. And so learning to find balance, and really it doesn't have to be super complicated. And this is where a lot of people, I think, get frustrated, because it's like, well, either this person wins or that person wins. And how do we find it fair? And well, if most of the family's extroverts, then isn't it more fair to, let them go do their thing? And that kind of binary thinking of either this or that isn't necessary. Like, there really are a lot of ways, for instance, with the, introvert versus extrovert, even just understanding that your child has that need and finding simple ways, like if you're at a party, finding a quiet corner or a different room, bringing a book for them to just like sit and have their own space, and just doing small things like that to just recognize and honor it. Not only prevents a lot of stress now, but is so powerful in teaching your children how to meet their own needs as they get older and they become adults. We talk about self-care as adults, but really learning to teaching our kids to be able to know, understand, and recognize their own needs and know how to get those needs met. That's a powerful life skill just right there.
Right. Yeah. And again, I think it's obviously it's awareness and of their needs, and obviously then they feel heard. I think obviously when kids are acting out, especially if they're the introverted child, right, it's because they're looking for that that little bit of attention that they don't get because the child that's more extroverted kind of hogs the spotlight.
Exactly.
So I totally appreciate that. So the social culture. So we've gone from the mental to the emotional, and now the social, which brings us up to the fourth culture that you covered. What's that one?
Yes, it's the physical culture, and this one's, I think, the easiest for people to kind of get a handle on, which is schedules, routines. Is it normal to just skip a meal because, we're just busy, and you need to just like deal with it. We're busy, we're going. But learning to get those kind of physical needs met. Another big one is like bedtimes and sleep schedules. What's your family culture around that? Is it, normal to sleep in or to stay up or whatever? And, as with any of these cultures, it is your family. It needs to be your family culture. And there's few rights and wrongs in these, with the single goal being what's going to make everyone calm, fulfilled, and happy, right? Like, that's our goal. Right. And when it comes to physical, there are certain like rules you want to hold to if you want everyone to be able to be calm and well regulated. Like small children, especially, they need their sleep, they need their food, they need snacks. I mean, that was a big one for me when I realized that my kids may be eating huge meals. Like, my kids are really good eaters. They burn a lot of energy. They just eat and eat and eat.
They're boys.
Yes, exactly. Like, I really thought it would take longer for the whole. Yes. Like, I thought it would take till teenagers before that really kicked in. Did not take that long. Yeah. But realizing that they still needed snacks, and they still like what I call the witching hour, like right before dinner, when everyone's just like stressed and tired and hungry and all these different things. What I realized is my kids aren't really hungry at like 2:00, but they are hungry by 4. Like, by 4:00 they're starving, but I don't have dinner ready yet.
Right.
And so of course my kids, yes, of course,
of course. No,
yes,
that's all good.
And so my kids by 4:00, they're starving. And so when I learned to actually give them a snack at like 2:00 in the afternoon, that, just something light, it actually really helped by, resolve that 4 to 5 period. Yeah. And so learning to balance that, and that's the phase I'm in, but also, as you get older, you have the extracurriculars and all the different activities and things that you're balancing there, and just learning having those kinds of schedules in place really impacts all the other functioning of your family, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, first of all, we just went out to visit our 4 grandsons, and there's 4 of them 5 and under, because there's twins in the middle there. And what you were referring to is that hour. She used to call it the meltdown hour. So, and it was like and it was like clockwork, so just like, how do you put those things in place that obviously keep things a little more even keel, whatever. And you got a lot of emotions flying around. So, obviously I love that. The other thing it made me think of when you were talking earlier about the fact that it is sort of easy for families to wrap around, structure, family schedules, what the kids need to be, all that. It isn't easier, obviously, because it's physical. And I get that. But I will tell you, and while it's extremely important, I think the other things you touched on first, right, are so insanely important, because I watched a family one time where I sat down and they had all the stuff on the refrigerator, like the dues and the rewards and the chores and all that kind of stuff. And they looked so organized when I sat down. I thought, oh my gosh, like they've got it all together. But then as soon as they sat down, nobody could make eye contact. Nobody wanted to talk with one another. And so there was a complete breakdown. So while they had figured out the physical culture, right, of it, there was zero ability on a relationship skill for them to trust one another. And so I feel like a lot of that mental and that emotional stuff that you talked about is really where all that trust kind of gets built in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it really, it's just as you were saying, if you really want even just to have your physical routines run smoothly the way you like, and create what you hope that they will create, you really do need to have that mental, emotional, social cultures figured out. And that's why I love using this structure, because it helps us, while they're all kind of interconnected, breaking it down in this way really helps us make sure that we're thorough, that we're looking at all these different pieces, and that we can get kind of a beat on them and track them, pay attention to them in this way.
Yeah.
Because because you need to have that balanced. You need to have it, working together and synergizing. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, yeah, so I think it's all beautiful. And I say this, and I totally it'll sound maybe a little bit off, but your light and energy around this is just beautiful. And I think that you're very relatable, and that families I think they'd be very fortunate to be able to kind of step into your space and understand what you're sharing. So I get genuinely excited about it. And I think it's because it kind of feeds off of what I get to share, which are the 4 gifts. And I feel like it's just sort of like the next, like we're going to put some things in place that allow us to connect and communicate in a way that's healthy. But now we've got to really dig into stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what you're doing, and I love that beautiful flow that you've got going on. So
thank you.
So anyway, so with that, and I want to make sure that people know how they can reach you, because I think that's just really, I know you've got stuff going on Facebook mostly, so that's a great space to reach out, and that's facebook.com Tieken coaching. Yes. Not Tieken, like I said one time, Tieken. It is Tieken coaching. So definitely reach out to Katie there. Katie's also going to be putting some stuff and doing some things, hopefully, in our Family Connection Challenge group. So if anyone's out there and wants to join into that, there's going to be some great stuff out there for her involvement as well. So you'll get to meet her and get to know her a little bit better that way as well. So anyway, what I love to do when I end the shows, and it's always amazing to me how fast it goes, but we always end it. I don't know if I told you this, so it's like surprise, but we always end it with a drop of thought, and a dot. We call it a drop of thought. Essentially, it's a pearl of wisdom. So if you were going to leave like one parting thought with our viewers today who came here to, to share with us, what would that be?
I'd say I'd like to kind of circle back to kind of the beginning of our conversation, where you mentioned how you can't move forward from guilt. And I think that one of the biggest struggles we have as parents, especially, and in trying to be good parents, right, is that we become more and more aware, and then we just get depressed. So I would say stay away from the shame and the guilt. Don't embrace that. Embrace the journey. It's not going to be perfect. And by modeling the keeping going, the keeping trying, the correcting, the making mistakes and making up for it, that's the biggest skill we want our kids to have.
Yeah.
Is to know how to keep going, how to fix mistakes, because they're going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's something I want to model for my kids.
Granting yourself some grace.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think as parents, sometimes I'm kind of fortunate, like all this stuff wasn't around when I was raising kids, and I just go, I wouldn't trade what I got right for what I got wrong. But I can see where like now you do, oh my gosh, like, can I say that? Or should I say this? Or did I do that? And, you can over evaluate. And I think sometimes we have to recognize we're all on the journey together, but standing in the awareness of it is really important. So yeah, exactly. Beautiful. So I love it. I also share a closing thought. It's the same one I always share because it's just my heartbeat, my passion, which is that ripples don't flow in, they flow out. And if we really want to see change out in our world, then it starts with us in our own homes, with our own families first. And some of the work that Katie's doing is really a big piece in that, in terms of how it is we come together and then how we choose to show up in the world beyond that. So anyway, thank you for being here. Obviously you see where to reach out to her at Tieken Coaching, and that's on the Facebook. So, until next time, thank you everyone who listened in today and who's part of our audience, and keep watching for more from Katie.
Yeah. Thank you, Cheryl.